All right, 320 watt panels here. One came loose. I had my pin turned the same direction and it popped out. I'm having a heck of a time getting it in there by myself, so. There's one pin, see it? And the other pin facing the same way. Shutter hardware. So that was a mistake that I didn't catch at the last minute late in the day. So I got to get that fixed. I'm going to mount my next panel, then I'll have 6 panels. The point now is I have 5 panels, 320 each, 1600 watts. Well, guess what Mr. Brilliant did here? Yes, I paid full tax. So had 60 amp solar controller, but I thought I did well. I got it for like 14 bucks on eBay. I was like, oh yeah, what a bargain. And it is a true MPPT, which I have another talk about that in another video. This is good if you're trying to deal with different voltages like 24 volt, 12 volt. This will change them over for you. It can handle the different. So anyway, 60 watts turns out, or 60 amps turns out at 24 volts. It's like 1440 or something like that. So I had 1600 watts going into a 1440, and I'm in here working on this thing and it's smoking. So I fried it. It could blue smoke. I let all the blue smoke out. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. So I let all the blue smoke out. Turns out 5 panels is too much. I should have only gone with 4 panels on that and left a little room. So I got the exact same thing, and this was only also less than 15 bucks. Get out of here, chicken! But this one is only 40 amps. So I've calculated that out. I can only put 3 panels, and that's right where it needs to be at 3 panels. 960 watts at 24 is the most you can do at 24 volts. So 3 panels is right with, hopefully within the range. So I got to go unwire my wire, because this wire is coming in right here, these two. 5 panels wired together. Too much juice. And I have it directly wired to my batteries because my batteries were not getting charged up. I'm on a cloudy day, so again, not the most brilliant idea, but my batteries are really low. I figured it's going to be okay, but I am going to get this thing changed out. So first I got to go unhook 2 panels. Then I'll only have 3 panels worth of juice coming in. Then I can use my new unfried charge controller to handle that. And then I'll just have 3 panels, well 2 panels right now sitting there doing nothing. I have a 3rd panel sitting there doing nothing. So I will have to figure out a different way. The end result is I need to spend more and get a better charge controller. I'm trying to do this on the low end of financing just to see what can be done. I'm trying to use the cheapest components and have backups and that kind of thing. And I'm also learning, and I'm just learning that you can burn up a charge controller. I'm going to change this out, and it wasn't a problem. We've had so many cloudy days. What happened is yesterday we had a really bright day, and we had those newly oriented panels, and boom, they were cranking out the power, and sure enough, it was just too much. Man, I got the fault code yet again. That's how I knew I had a problem. And this is even turned off, so I got things to figure out. These are old used batteries. I got to figure out how many amps they've got and figure out what's going on. I think everything's been running fine just because all these batteries were topped off. But we'll get the charge controller going, and hopefully we'll see things working. Luckily, we held off on putting anything in this freezer, so we don't have any jeopardy of anything. So I just have it turned off. Yeah, it's definitely showing a fault. Must be low battery. So I'll let you know what I figure out. And still struggling with charge controllers. Wiggle here. So I had 4 panels wired together. The 5th one was, oh, it's still wired. Sorry. But what I'm doing is I unhooked this panel. This 4th panel, I unhooked it from the harness by just undoing those solar connectors. I had little pigtails. I just went ahead and left all that hooked up. I didn't take it apart, just in case for later. It's not hurting anything, it's just sitting there. So now I have 3 panels into this harness. I just have to go down here and unhook this last one, which I wasn't thinking. But I'm going to take this piece of metal off. It's good that I haven't buttoned all this back up yet. My procrastination has paid off, because I'm going to have to run another piece of number 8 in there to pick up these other 3 panels. So I know that piece of number 8 gauge wire is fine. I'm running these 3 off of 1. That's going to go into my solar, into my DC 24 volt pressure pump and my 24 volt DC deep freeze. And that will be 960 watts, which a 40 amp controller will just handle. So that should be fine. And then I'll get another 40 amp controller for the other 3, and we should be fine. And until I need to wire them all together for some reason, I'll just stay with the lower end of the solar controllers. I just don't need that much power for anything. That's where I'm at. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one unhooked from the harness, and then everything else is ready to go. So it's not that bad. Running another wire is gonna be a bit of a pain, but I probably was maxing out that number 8 anyway. Now I know it's going to be fine. So again, not that difficult at all. I went ahead and pulled the connectors apart. So this 5th panel is also unhooked. Now I will have to redo when I get in here. These 2 wires running in here. See the yellow and the white? This yellow and this white are coming from that panel that's not even wired in yet. So I will be able to just start off with another piece of number 8 right here and bring this panel over here. I think it'll all reach. So somewhere in this area I'll be able to hook my other 3 panels together and just run another complete different circuit. But that's what you do when you're doing more smaller systems, not tying everything in. But there is some redundancy here, and I'm not, if one set goes down, we still have another set that we could do a little rewiring, and we have a redundancy. Whereas if you have one big system and something breaks, you might lose everything. And the big system, the components just get exponentially more expensive the higher amperages you're dealing with. So if you can design smaller systems running on smaller amperages, I think you're going to get a lot more for your money. And the replacement parts are a lot less. You're not going to be buying these giant controllers or inverters. You design your system to do the job you need it to do, and then design a separate system. And you can still have all your panels lined up on a roof, and still you just break them out. Like a large part of what I'm going to be doing is solar water heating. So I bought a 2,000 watt 24 volt DC element. You just get a regular hot water heater, and it's a $15 thermostat that you can get. It's a 24 volt DC thermostat. You can get one from like 140, 160. I got mine at 140, and you just attach it right to the hot water tank right next to the metal where the other thermostat is. You just take the old thermostat off, the AC thermostat, put this DC thermostat on. Pretty straightforward, and now you have a completely usable solar electric water heater and 2,000 watts. A lot of your elements are running at 1,500, so if you get a single element tank and put a 140 degree 24 volt DC into the 2,000, and this is like a $50 setup. It's not break the bank. It's like 50 bucks to convert a regular AC hot water tank, and now you're on DC. Now you're going to say the expensive part. Well, it would take 6 of these panels, 320 watts each. So that's whatever that would be, 1920 or whatever, if my math is wrong, but it's just under 2,000 watts. So I would just run 6 of these panels. Well, I paid $130 a piece for these panels, so yeah, okay, that's $840 or whatever it would be. $840 plus not even $900. Then you got to have the tank if you already have a tank. If you buy a new tank, let's say it's another $300. You have $1,200 in this thing, but it's giving you a reasonable amount of hot water for 25 years at no additional cost. Believe me, that hot water tank you're using, that eats some electric. That's a big part of your electric bill. Even if you're only using 40 bucks a month to run it, which I'm sure it's probably more than that, but 40 times 12 is $480. In 2 years, you paid for your hot water tank, provided it's doing about the same job. And you could get a dual element tank, and you could put 2 different thermostats in it. You could put a thermostat at 160 and 140. Put the top thermostat at 160, the bottom thermostat at 140, or vice versa, whichever way would work better. I think you'd probably want the higher one at the top. But the point is it can be done in a way that's you're not relying on a bunch of expensive inverters. You're not relying on a bunch of expensive converters or charger controllers or batteries. You don't need all of that. And if you design your system for that, then none of that's going to be running through expensive equipment. You can just, whenever it's sunny, you have hot water. If you have a cloudy day, you might not have hot water. So you just don't take a shower, and you don't do your dishes that day. You don't do your laundry that day. You do laundry on sunny days. You can adjust to that. It's not that big a deal. Maybe you need a shower every day. I don't think you do. A couple times a week. I mean, in the old days, the ladies washed their hair once a month. Really, they did. It's just a matter of what comfort you think you need to have and what luxury you need to have. You can change this thing around and get off grid. It's a realistic approach rather than just $75,000, $100,000 solar system. You just don't need to do it. I'm talking about $1,500 or less to get your hot water off grid. And maybe, okay, fine, you double it. You need to have you got a big family, you need 4,000 watts of hot water heating. Fine. 3,000, 1,500, but you could probably get by with 1,500 if you tried. Anyway, I'm going long on this thing. I would get some systems in place and get off grid. That is what I think the direction of the homesteaders, the people that are serious about just being free and away from all the confines of the system. You don't have to live in a tent and boil hot water over a stove to get by. You can live pretty much the way you have been. You may have to make some adjustments. If you spend enough money, you don't make any adjustments. But most of us don't have that kind of cash, so we just do it on moderate, balance it out. So anyway, I'm going to go hook up my inverter, or my solar charge controller, sorry. I have no inverters yet. I'm using no inverters yet. So as I'm down here walking over to put in my controller, the panels are not the expensive part of solar, and they're getting cheaper all the time. You can do like I do, go to the solar companies and find overstock. Panels that don't meet the footprints of their new, everything's evolving all the time. They have ground mount, they have roof mount, and they use certain sizes, and they have certain rails, and they want to keep everything uniform and looking good on these installations. So these larger old style, they have bigger footprints than they need. These older style panels, they're not useful to them, and they might have a few extras laying around that they moved on from. They bought them by the truckload to get the price wholesale, and bought them by the container load or whatever they do, but they end up with a few extras, and they'll part with them. Go to your solar guys. Solar is like the Wild West. There's companies everywhere. It's just madness out there. So you just find these one of these operations and just make a cash deal on some of their panels. The panels are not the hard part. The panels are not the hard part. The panels are not the expensive part, especially if you can be flexible in what your approach is. So do you have extra real estate, especially if you're out in the country homesteading? So what if it's a bigger profile? So what if the footprint's bigger than the more modern stuff? So what? How many watts does it put out? Is it new? Is it going to put out watts for 25 years? Yeah, okay, so you have 2/3 of a larger panel or a third larger panel than you need for the amount of watts. Yeah, the new ones are putting out 320 and the old ones are putting out 250. So what? Monocrystalline, better, depending. They are better. They last longer. They handle the heat better. Monocrystalline is better. But you get polycrystalline, use it. So what? You get the price on it. I would try to focus on new stuff if you can. If you get used, make sure it's got the output. But you can still get a lot of years out of used if you have to. Put the panels to work. That's not the expensive part. It's the batteries, the inversion, the solar controllers, all that. It's more expensive. Build small systems to do the job, and you'll be happier for it. And take your $15 charge controller. So I got a bargain on this thing. The one that I didn't burn up. No, this is the 60. That's the one I burned up. Anyway, I'll get off my tirade now. I got 3 panels worth of juice coming in now. I got 960 watts coming in, which is right at 24 volts. That's right at 40 amps. So I should be fine. This controller should be able to handle it, unlike the other one I caught on fire yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this thing up, and we'll see how we're looking. Okay, we appear to be charging, and my 24 volt bank appears to be at 23.2. So apparently, looking at this thing, solar power is coming in, and it's charging my battery. What it looks like it's showing me here. So I'm going to repeat. I probably said this before, but when you're hooking this stuff up, you do it in a sequence. And boy, I noticed yesterday you do it out of sequence. I think the thing was already in trouble, but I don't remember how I did it. But man, this thing was smoking. I was fiddling around with the battery and then it started smoking. So when you're hooking it up, you go negative to your battery, positive to your battery. Then you go negative to your panels, positive to your panels. Now if I was going to take this apart for some reason, I would take the positive off the panel, then the negative off the panel, then the positive off the battery, and the negative. So you just go backwards from that. And it did spark when I hooked up the solar panel, so maybe you want to do it in the morning or something. But if I was going to be messing with these batteries, I've learned that you go ahead and unhook it all first and then hook it back. Problem is these cheap lugs on these things, they're a pain. So know which way they're moving, make sure you pay attention, make sure your wires are going in there right. Tighten those lugs, don't over tighten them, don't strip your screws. You gotta pay attention because it's easy to mess these things up. So just take your time, make sure your screwdriver is well engaged, and stop when it gets tight. Don't over tighten it. Don't move it around once you get it in place, because especially on these cheap ones. You have the nicer ones, they have a lot better lugs, but they're way more expensive. So at any rate, my 40 amp charger is handling, my 40 amp controller is handling my 3 panels, 960 watts at 24 volts, 40 amps. That's the max. Don't put 4 panels on this. You got to add up your panels. Don't put too many watts into these things. You'll fry them. You'll fry them. Right now it seems happy, and this thing may work for many years. We shall see. But For now, I'm going back to my other project. This thing is working. I've got the, when I turn on my deep freeze, it shows a fault. Well, it's not showing a fault. Oh, there it goes, showing a fault code. So I think it's too few volts. It's sensing too few volts, so it's going into fault. So I'm just going to leave that off. So my pump is hooked up, and it's a lot less picky, so it should be fine. We'll see if we get these batteries pulled up on a cloudy day. It's 23.3, so I'll come back later and make sure we've got, you know, it should be well over 24. It should be, and again, I don't know if my good batteries were pulling up my bad batteries. These batteries are unknown condition. We'll just see how they charge, and that'll give us an indication. That thing wasn't charging right. This thing wasn't charging right. Finally, we have something charging right, so we'll be able to see what happens with the battery bank. Right now, as long as my pressure pump is running and I have water pressure, we're happy. That pressure pump has a wide range of voltage that it'll take. So 23 is plenty. It'll run. It'll run all the way down to like 18 or 19 or something like that. Maybe even less than that. It's designed to be highly variable with voltage. For now, as long as I have water pressure, I'm happy. This deep freeze. I would like to get some reliability. We saw the reliability, but then it wasn't working at all. So now we're back seeking the reliability of the batteries to be able to handle the job. Back to my other project. Thanks, y'all.